Hi everyone, welcome to Mompreneur Space live show podcast where I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs from all around the world so that they can share with you how they overcome their challenges and struggles as entrepreneurs. I'm your host Kenneth Chu and today is 104th episode of Mompreneur Space live show podcast. This podcast started with a very simple thought of sharing inspiring mompreneur story or women changemaker story that will be able to let you resonate and start to make a difference in your or your family's life. I met and come across a lot of amazing women entrepreneurs that share their story in the past 5 years, and I'm very blessed to have connected with them and share their story on my podcast. Today's guest is an amazing women entrepreneurs in Web3 who I've connected on LinkedIn last month in January. Her social enterprise, Gaia Murray, attracted me to find out more about what she is doing. In this episode, we will be talking about empowering women in developing countries. Catherine is originally from Sweden and is educated in US. Catherine is currently living in India and working on her new luxury brand as the CEO and the co-founder of Gaia Murray alongside with Ashley Tandon. Together, they established a brand focused on preserving artisan culture and skills around the world. So without further ado, let me welcome Catherine. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Kenneth. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So I know that now currently you are back in Sweden after 4 years. So glad and good morning to you at the same time. So maybe before we get started, right? Maybe you can do a short introduction of yourself to share with the audience where are you from and currently what are you doing.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I really appreciate it. Um, so I'm as you said, I'm originally from Sweden, and I spent the past 24 years in the U.S., and that's where I was educated. And because of my experience, it started mostly when I was in finance, when I started to understand more about money and more about people and what's actually out there in the world. And I'd always really wanted to help people, but I didn't really know how to do it or where to do it. And in 2020, Ashish and I had been speaking about the challenges of fundraising. I had started another nonprofit, which is sort of on the back burner at this point. It's something that I'm working slowly on. But because of the challenges for fundraising for this NGO, we decided to start something that would be able to support um, Bridging Futures. And ultimately, what came out of it was this social enterprise called Gaia More. And it was our shared values and our desire for our passion for history and our desire to help people that really pushed us towards not only India, but learning more about India on my part, and all the beautiful things that makes India so unique. So, and Ashish started to introduce me to alumni that he knew that were already working with artisans in various different industries throughout India. And as I kept talking to them, we started understanding there was a lot of similarities and synchronicities that we really wanted to help these artisans. So the businesses that they had started weren't because they wanted to just exploit these artisans, but they also wanted to somehow make an impact and give them sustainable income. So that's where we sort of came into the picture. And over time, as we started working with these partners and with these artisans more, we realized that we wanted to not just give them a place where we could market the products that they're making, but we also wanted to market them because we knew that there was never an option or a possibility for them to do so. Um, because they lack education. Often many of them are illiterate, or if they have any kind of a basic education, it's maybe a few years at most. And even the ones that are educated, they're very well educated in their particular industry and nothing really else. So for them to be able to go out into the world and simply create a big business and start marketing themselves, it's nearly an impossibility for the realistic view of this. But that's where people like us really have um, the benefit, because we can utilize the international experience that we have, the compassion that we have, and the desire to really work with them and to give them the opportunity to do what they wouldn't be able to do themselves. So we created this platform where it's an e-commerce place. We call it New Luxury because of how we're dealing with the artisans and how we're trying to bridge that gap between the people making the products and the people actually consuming the product. So we call them patrons. So our patrons were then build this relationship with the people who are making the products, the artisans, because we're able to do those introductions. So with every product that we sell, we also include the information about the artisan, who they are, what their family unit consists of, how old they are. And it's important to actually say their name. And for many of them, we actually have um, a picture or a video of them making that product, because, and ultimately that's the big goal, is for every single product to have videos of all of the different artisans working at the different stages, so that when you buy a product, you know exactly who it was that held that product or worked on that product at what point. So it becomes much more valuable, because we all know that the most valuable things that we buy are often ones that have some kind of a sentimental value. So we either bought them when we were traveling, or our parents gave them to us, or it's some kind of a family heirloom. So we're trying to recreate that kind of an atmosphere, or a legacy within every single product that we make. So we're never producing large amounts of quantities. It's always smaller quantities and limited editions, because we want them to be unique, and we really want our patrons to value them and have a sense of pride that not only did I buy this product, but I know exactly that my money contributed to this family, because Guy Amore was able to give 3% of my purchase to these artisans. And now I get to see, how this family is benefiting, because Guy Amore is going back to the artisan. We are helping them in a very tangible manner. So along with the story of who they are, we also find out what kind of struggles that they have. So it can be anything from lack of tuition for their children to go to school, or it might be debt that they just have not been able to pay off because they needed to borrow money to pay for the supplies, for the raw materials to make the products, and then they just weren't able to sell their products at market value. And they were constantly getting undercut, and it's just a vicious cycle that they get stuck in. And then we want to help them break that kind of a cycle. And then there's some of them have little bit better ambitions, or bigger ambitions, I should say, where they want to build a home. And this everyone wants a home, so it's not a big thing for them to ask. It's not like they want a $20,000 home. It might cost $2,000, which, when we're selling it at mid-range price, it doesn't actually take that many products for us to sell to be able to help them make that a reality. And because we want to continue having that relationship and building that relationship with them, we really don't mind it taking a little bit more time and making that investment into them, because it's worth it. That's how we're really uplifting people, and making luxury fashion not an environmental negative impact, but changing the narrative to making sure that, as you're buying something beautiful, you're also creating something beautiful, or allowing something to continue or to grow. And that's the sort of long-term benefit that we see happening with Guy Amore.
Thanks, Catherine, for sharing, and also a great introduction. And this also brings us to the topic of our episode, which is empowering women in developing countries. So why did you choose? Because I know that you know about the artisan through Ashley, your husband. But back then, you when you first started, right? Have you imagined that you will be doing this? I would say, to build a social enterprise, to even empower women in developing countries. Have you ever thought of that, or is there a back end story, or a reason why you choose to empower women in all these developing countries?
There really isn't. It's just always something that I felt passionate about, whether it's helping people or helping animals. I think it's something that we're here to do anyway on this planet. So it's not much. I mean, it's definitely a passion, but I think it's just something that we're supposed to do. And India, I can't honestly tell you. It just sort of fell into my lap, and I just followed it. So I think it was a universally ordained sort of thing. But I'm very, very happy and very thankful that I am in the position that I am, because I'm able to experience India from a very different perspective. And I'm able to not just see it from a tourist perspective, but I'm able to see it from a business perspective, a local cultural perspective, and from a female perspective as well. As you know, as I travel, as I start to get to know these people in these very remote villages and meet entrepreneurs that are working on amazing projects, and as I hear more about stories of women that are around India working on projects that I have nothing to do with, it's extremely inspiring to see what they're able to do, um, when they don't have a lot of resources, when they're not really educated. But as long as you have the will and the inspiration for yourself, um, you can really make anything happen. And there's no difference between men and women in that regard. It's just whether or not we have the right support system. I think that's the biggest challenge.
No, I began to hear the reason also because you were exposed, you were introduced to that whole environment. And at the same time, because I also saw that you were an engineer before and you moved into finance and now into social impact. So what was the difference? Like you were from environment that a lot of people might, I would say, envy of, like you were engineer, you study hard, you got into engineering, and you move into finance, which is also another sector that most people will want to. So what was your was there an aha moment when you moved into exploring into social impact and doing what you are doing now? What is the
There was.
difference?
hmm So when I honestly, when I started my education, I really didn't know what it is that I wanted to do. Had I pursued what I was really passionate about, it would have taken a completely different turn. But here I am. Um, so I ended up studying engineering, which was more of a family lineage in a way. My dad's an engineer, his dad was an engineer, so it was
I
sort of
see.
just suggested that I try it. And I think we're always put in positions where we have to learn and be uncomfortable so that we can actually grow. If we're always doing only things that we're comfortable doing, we never grow as human beings. So I'm actually really thankful for the fact that I had to be, you know, that I was pushed to do this, and didn't quit. Even though I'm not necessarily the best theoretical engineer, I'm better at the practical, you know,
Mm,
aspect, the hands-on stuff. That makes sense to me. But I was never told that I couldn't be an engineer, or that I couldn't work with my hands, or that I couldn't be in an industry that is mainly, you know, male dominated. And it's fine. I had a great experience doing it. A lot of positives and a lot of negatives, and just a lot of learning experiences in general. But at some point, I had enough. I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't my calling. So I ended up quitting. And that just sort of led me to, by accident or divine purpose, not sure. But anyway, I accidentally met someone who was working at, you know, JP Morgan. And he mentioned that they had this internship program. So I applied and I ended up getting in. Again, I was very thankful for it because I really didn't have any experience in banking whatsoever, but it was an amazing experience. And I really got to see the view from 20,000 feet. That if you're not in the industry, you don't really understand how it works and how big these banks actually are and how much money there really is in the world. And you know, when you're dealing with numbers going, you know, out into the 6, 7 digits, it's a lot of money. And I just kept thinking that there's, you know, all these people are making so much money, but are we actually living? Are we really doing anything with our lives? Like, if we just go work, go home, and sit on the couch, then what? Meanwhile, there's millions of people that are actually suffering out there. So, what are we actually doing with ourselves? And that's when I ended up, you know, thinking about what it is that I really wanted to do. What was my purpose? And I was encouraged to start my, you know, my nonprofit, which is focused on children's education, and that's something that I'm also passionate about, but not necessarily pursuing so much right now. But I also think that we really need to value and think about children's education, and think, you know, talking from a mom's perspective, I'm not one yet, but I understand the fundamental aspects of education lead to the long-term outcome of a child. And whether that education is at home or at school, the fundamentals have to be strong and positive in order for that child to come out as a functional and valuable member of society. So I was really drawn to that and really wanted to work with organizations that were working with children, because I think it's such an important um, uh, it's such an important part of life that we really need to pay attention to.
Okay, so coming to talk about the children education, what makes you, is there a reason, or is it coming from yourself, from your upbringing? That's why you felt that children's education is very important, and also at the same time you were from Sweden, right? So is that a reason from your upbringing that you realize that it's very important for children, especially in the children education?
Yeah, yeah. My dad and my grandfather both used to push us a lot that we have to do our homework and have to do our homework. I was not a particularly studious student myself. I don't particularly like
Mhm.
studying and taking tests. I prefer real life learning. But nonetheless, I understand, because I'm always trying to learn myself, and I'm always trying to put myself in uncomfortable situations where I force myself to grow. Hence, going into into engineering and then going into finance. And I had, no experience in finance, but I still managed to do it. And if I
Mm.
can do it, that means anyone can do it. Because I'm not the smartest person on the planet, but I
Mm.
just find a way that makes it work for me. Um, and find ways to educate myself, whether that's watching movies or YouTube, whatever
Mm.
it is. But I think education is so critical, and I think it's something that we're lacking. And when you speak to individuals nowadays and they don't know anything about what's happening in the world, or they don't know anything about their own country's
Mm.
history, it's like, oh my God, this is not going down a very good path. Because if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. So it's I think it's absolutely critical that we educate our children to be able to think, and
Mm.
and think critically, and also to continuously ask questions, and never stop them from asking questions. They should always be asking a million questions, because
Mm.
that's how you learn. When you're
Yeah.
always critiquing something and always asking why. Um, it helps kids grow, and they grow very, very quickly when they're allowed to actually be kids.
Wow. And I want to dive deeper because I'm really curious that where do you get this idea from, or uh, on who inspire you, or is there a role model that has this learning or lifetime learning kind of attitude, I would say. And for you, it seems that you are very into education, into learning and all that stuff. Is there someone in your life, or it could be your grandparents, that really inspire you, or they are role models? Because it doesn't it doesn't occur in a lot of people that they are very into learning and into exploring, into even coming out from the comfort zone. So is there anyone like that in your life that inspire you, um, that you know of, or it just naturally comes to you?
Yeah, I think it does. Although my parents both are I mean, they have different skill sets, both of them. So I got half of both of them, which I'm thankful for. But I think it came to a point when I started realizing that I didn't know as much as I should.
Hmm.
And that's when I started to understand the importance of education itself.
When,
And
when was
education,
that point? When was that point that you realized that you do know that much and you started?
I actually reconnected with an old childhood friend,
Mm.
and this was at the same time when I was going into banking. And he was really, really like a savant when it came to history. Um,
Mm.
so it was amazing just listening to him. And I realized that I don't know anything about history. And then I
Mm.
realized how much I actually loved it, which when I was in high school, I didn't care about history. But I think it's because of the way that it was taught. It was so boring.
Yep.
But when you actually
Mm-mm.
come to it from a place of relevance, so you start with recent history, and then once you start to see, you put things into perspective, then you tie back a little
Yeah.
bit at a time, and then you start to
Connect
see the
back the
big
dots. Yeah.
right. And then I realized that it's actually fascinating, because you look around
Mm.
everywhere you go, and especially when you travel to different countries. If you come to Europe, or if you come to just take Sweden for an example. um, many thousands of years is sitting right around us. Like there are runes from the Viking times, or slightly after because they didn't write, but slightly after, that are just 45 minutes away from me. And these are
Mm.
stones that have so what they did was in the stone they carved into it and then they painted it red, and that's the same red color that's been in there for the past 1000 years.
Wow.
It's right there, people pass by it every day, but nobody pays attention to it.
Yeah.
So all these things, and that goes back to why I'm so passionate about Gaia More, because I don't want the future generations to look at us and say, why did you
Mm.
let these things die? Why did you not take the time to preserve these skills and make sure that we had people that were working on hand looms and that were
Mm.
carving leather by hand and making jewelry by hand? Because in 50 years from now, when everyone's making everything by machine, it's not nothing is going to be personal anymore, and
Yeah.
I just don't want that to happen.
Mm. Yeah. I think it struck that on that part that your friend opened up on that, and it hit on you that, hey, in fact, there's a lot of things that is interesting in the world that we have misses. um, and that also connected you with Gail Moray, where you are connecting with all the I would say the lost traditional art, the culture, and the skill set, which is very rare today. Like you mentioned, a lot of things have been industrialized. That's where all these skills have been forgotten, or it has not been cherished, and over time all these people may pass on, and all these skills have not been passed down on for generation. It's the same for in Asia. Yeah, I think it's in Asia, even for the Chinese, a lot of things have not been passed down, like the favorite dish, the
Mhm.
favorite cuisine, or maybe the family dish that is still in our childhood dreams, that has not been replicated. Like my grandfather's favorite sliced fish soup that you cannot find it anywhere. Yeah, so there's a lot of things, I think, like you mentioned, Gary Murray basically help you to fulfill that part, that keeping the culture, keeping the tradition, and also because this is something that's so valuable that
Mhm.
today people are not seeing it until it has been gone. So I think that is where you get the reason of continuing learning, and at the same time also to learn from the history and how we can keep all this tradition or this culture going on for generation.
Yeah.
And this is what you are doing also. So why how do you connect, like supporting all this artisan with Web3?
Um, well, the long-term sort of picture here is that we would be able to um, bring not just the products, but bring the entire process into Web3. So we're going to be launching our digital store, our virtual store. I'm gonna say probably next month. It keeps getting pushed because this is such a new space that no one ever knows how long it's going to take to actually develop something. So it's taking a little bit longer than we expected, but nonetheless, when we do launch it, it's going to have our digital earrings in it, which was made by a really good friend of mine. And if anyone is actually interested in working with him because he does such a great job, then let me know. Um, but the end goal is that we would be able to actually make an avatar of the artisan that we're working with, and then if we're thinking outside the box here, we can even create a space where these avatars are able to have like their own little box kind of thing. Like if you went to a trade show and you'd visit the stand, you'd be able to interact with the artisan in person and see their work. So that same kind of thing is what we're going towards, and in a way it would sort of be like a museum because it starts to build up a legacy. And the more artisans that we have that are in the metaverse, the better it is for the entire industry, because brands and patrons alike would be able to access these artisans, meet them, start to do business with them, better understand how these products are made. And also it helps slowly change the way that the fashion industry sort of works. And that's what we're looking to do. And that's what the whole metaverse is all about, is the decentralization of data and making it more about the citizens of the world rather than corporations. So putting the power back into the people, or back with the people, I should say. So the benefits of the metaverse is obviously engagement, and access. Those are the two biggest things that I would say. So you wouldn't have to travel to India to actually meet these artisans. You would just be able to go into the Gaia More universe, and then be able to say, okay, well, I want to see what artisans it was that made my bag, and then you can go into that area, and then you could see them, and you'd see the video of them working, and maybe there's an avatar of them, and they'd be able to tell a little bit about themselves. Granted, for us to actually have the artisans themselves in the universe or metaverse, that's a little bit of a different thing. So let's stay tuned to see how that goes. For some of them that are younger, maybe that would be a little bit of a different story. But for the older generation, I don't think we'd be able to see them. That's just asking a little bit too much for them.
I think you might not know, because we also thought that all this older generation may not keep up with technology, may not be attending live streams and all that. But because of the pandemic, I think a lot of them catch up with it. My parents definitely had catch up with technology, buying on e-commerce, marketplaces, and even watching TikTok. Yeah. So I think it's a matter of time that it will go mainstream. If there's enough, I would say there's enough reason for them to hop on, or there might be another opportunity, or might be another situation that all of us have to go online to digital, or even the metaverses. So at this point of time, because am I right to say that this is your first entrepreneurial venture? Is that?
Technically, I suppose it's my second. Futures, the nonprofit, was the first one. So this is technically the second one, yeah.
Yeah. So when you step into like non-profit social enterprise, what would you say that is the common myth that you can debunk for most people, especially you being in it, being the founder? What would be the myth that you would like to debunk?
A common myth.
Yeah.
Well, let me start by saying first that I think you need to have a sense of purpose. In order to actually have a social enterprise, or any kind of an enterprise that is focused on impact, you need to have something that's sustainable. And having an NGO or a social enterprise which is focused on social impact is great. But if you don't have a product that people will buy, you're not going to go anywhere. So that's the number one thing that you actually need to think about. Also, when it comes to running an NGO, it's difficult. It's challenging because you need to have the resources. So it's one thing to start an NGO and have grand ambitions. It's another thing to actually build that. So you really need to have a strong network. So I would advise anyone thinking about it to really start working on their network and start building that up before they actually launch, or simultaneously as they launch, and then start to work it out. But it does become quite difficult because you're constantly running around asking people for money and funds. And so that's the benefit of having, if you're going to start an NGO, if you're going to have something where like if you're working with women, and you have a group, they have a lot of self-help groups here in India, or in India, I should say, where the women are working on making a type of product, and then the NGO sells that product on their behalf, and then the money goes back to the women. So that's a great kind of business model, because yes, it's an NGO, but they're making a physical product, which means they're sustainable from a business perspective. They're not just running around asking for funds all the time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for sharing this. And also to make it with a purpose, right? With a purpose, so that it's sustainable, with a product that people want to buy. I think that is a very valid point. I think the other thing maybe you can share more is about there's always a myth, right? Because I've been doing charity, being involved. Even I myself, I'm chapter president of a non-profit organization called Women of Global Change, where we support women and children all around the world. People always ask me, Is it that you guys depends on donations, on fundraising? Is that the only source of income, and how do you make money? So I believe that people, you might have come across people who ask you that, right? So how do you answer that?
Well,
Or if
because
you
I'm
have
not
an
running, yeah, because I'm not running the NGO right now, I don't have an answer to that particular one. But at least for Gaia More, I mean, we're selling products, right? We're selling products at a medium point price range so that we can sustain our business. Because without that, we wouldn't be able to do the social impact work. So we wanted to do, and our business is for profit, so it's a
Mm,
C corporation. So it's not like we're doing this just out of the pure goodness of our hearts because we're Mother Teresa. No, it doesn't work like that. Because if we don't have the money to be able to run the company, then it just doesn't exist. So
mm,
money is a necessity in order for everything to work. But we also wanted to make sure that we do the right thing, and operate as a conscious company and a conscientious company where, and I should say a brand, where we really take into consideration the people first. So the money is
mm,
a means to make the ends meet, and to make it is a means to an end, to make sure
mm.
that we fulfill the desires of helping these people, and protecting and sustaining culture and history.
Thanks a lot, Catherine. So um, you have been running Gaia for a while. What would be the challenges that you face during this entrepreneurial journey? Can you share more with us?
Yeah. One thing that I would say is, if you're going to start an e-commerce, do some research on how to do it. I sort of just jumped into it, and I ended up making quite a few mistakes, which it's the number one thing I would say is do your due diligence when it comes to finding the right partners.
Mm,
When it comes to, and a big one is always logistics. Logistics and packaging always seem to get you somewhere. And that's something that sort of happened on our end. And it was, if I could do it over again, I would have done it completely different. But it is what it is. So I would say make sure that you do your due diligence. Make sure you talk to people first. If you have questions, try and find someone on LinkedIn, or someone that already has that experience that you can ask some questions to. I find that people that have been entrepreneurs or on the entrepreneurial journey are so much more helpful than you can think.
yeah,
I would say 99.9% of people, if you ask them a question, they're 100% willing to help you. And they won't ask you anything in return because they've all been there, and they
yeah,
don't like seeing other people make the mistakes that they've already made.
yeah.
So but we all still make the mistakes anyway. It's just something that we have to do, and something that we have to grow. I would say the other thing is, it's very challenging dealing with multiple different cultures, especially if you're dealing with a high context or a low context, or you come from a high context and you deal with a low context, or vice versa.
Mm,
So I come from a low context, right? Sweden and the United States are fairly similar. Um, India is completely opposite. So it's a lot of reading in between the lines. There's a lot of empty spaces in between the words. Um, how they operate is quite different. You really have to understand these complexities and these nuances in order to really make it work.
mm,
And those take time to really understand. And someone can explain them to you, but if you have someone who can actually be there with you and sort of handhold you through the first couple of years, it
yep.
helps. Because trying to do it alone is it can lead to a lot of challenges, because India is a very complicated culture. It's a
Mm,
brilliant one, and it's a beautiful one, but when it comes to business, it's just very complicated, and that's just the honest truth from my own personal opinion. I
mm,
love working there, and I love working with people, but it does get challenging. There's a lot of rules and regulations, and if you don't know them, you can get into a lot of trouble. So it's
yep.
finding the key people to get the information from, who can help you.
I think that also brings to a point that the topic also empowering women in developing countries, because in developing countries basically you are out of your country, you are into a new world, into a new environment with a different culture, with a different whole set, maybe laws, regulations, even people, the way people work together is also very different. And sometimes even like for my case, right, I work with a few Southeast Asian, like Philippines, Indonesian, Malaysian most, and I realize in all these different countries, business, the way they do business is very different.
Hmm.
The way they promise you something is also very different,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, you know that, right? So it's
Hmm.
sometimes we have to be careful. And I used to work for a Taiwanese boss, and it's totally different the way they do business, the way they what do you call that, negotiate businesses is very different. Some of them are not as direct, right? And
Hmm.
when you go into the nitty gritty stuff, and that's where everything's just turned haywire.
Yeah.
Like there's no black and white, there's all mutual, there's all verbal. In the end, nothing gets done. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different cases, right? There's a lot of talks, nothing gets going. And even on LinkedIn, right, sometimes you connect with people, in the end they want to collaborate with you, and they assume that you agree in whatever that you want to do, but in the end it's not. So
Hmm.
there's different ways. Like in Singapore, the way we do things with, versus versus my partners in Malaysia is totally different. For them, there's no black and white. For us in Singapore, everything is black and white. Everything has to be written down, either by the email. For them, it's all verbal, and in the end, all this will cause miscommunication and also confusion and all that. So it's a very different kind of style. And for Singapore, we are very fast. Like today, if I ask you to do something, tomorrow I will continue to follow up with you. But for my Malaysian friends, they may not. Yeah, they may
Right.
make follow up with you the next week. Even when I was working with Jakarta, when I have a factory there, it was worse. Like 2 weeks, nothing comes out. So sometimes you get a bit frustrated, because in developing country, that these are the challenges, I believe, right? Even for you to work with people in developing country.
Hmm.
I think this is one of the challenges. Would you say that?
Yes, absolutely. I would say yes, 100%. You nailed it.
Yeah, and also the pace, right? Because in developed countries versus developing country, the pace are very different. The way people talk, the way people move, the way people think is also very different. So I'm glad that you share on that. So are there other challenges that you face, other than the culture, other than the working style, the business? Is there any personal challenges that you face?
Yes, I absolutely. Um, this I think is anyone. I mean, man, woman doesn't matter. We all face the challenge of one, am I the right person to do this?
Hmm.
Two, why am I the right person to do this? Do I have the experience? Don't I have the experience? Will I gain the experience? There's always the comparison between yourself and other people. But and then you look at progress and then you wonder, what is progress? What does it mean? Is it only
Hmm.
financial? Because that's what we tend to measure. We tend to measure the health of a business by its revenue, right?
Yeah.
But and same thing with the success. If someone asks you how is your business doing, and if you're not making revenue, you say, well, it sucks. It's not making revenue. But you don't you don't necessarily measure progress, or you don't measure project progress by only one column. There's so many
Hmm.
different aspects to it. And it's anything from physical growth to spiritual growth to environmental growth. I mean, there's just so many aspects to it. It's just like a person. Even if you're not growing financially, it doesn't mean you're not growing spiritually. It doesn't mean you're not growing intellectually. So, or your health isn't improving. So there's so many aspects to it. And I think that the challenge that I face the most is keeping myself in check and reminding myself this is just the journey that I'm on. It's my
Hmm.
journey and no one else's. And I cannot compare myself to someone else. And there's a lot of things that I want to do, but I'm only one person and I only have 24 hours. And I also have other things that I want to do and other interests. So I have to give myself a lot of leeway and a lot of remind myself to give myself a break, to forgive myself when I don't get something done, and then just know that I will get it done at some point, and whenever that is, it's meant to be that way. And also that whatever knowledge I don't have today, I can and will have it tomorrow. So there's always that opportunity for growth, and we have to keep that in mind. And comparing yourself to someone else and someone else's progress is probably the worst thing you can do,
Hmm.
because you're not them. You don't know what they went through, and you don't know how much help they had or whatever financial support they had. You just have no idea.
Yeah.
So you have to just focus on yourself, on your inner growth, and always just compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And if you are making progress between yesterday and today, you're doing great.
Hmm.
That's what I
Yeah.
think.
I think I like the part where you talk about is like this is everybody's race, your own race, right? Your own journey, your own path. It's very hard for you to compare. It's
Hmm.
it's as if that you're not comparing apple to apple. You're just comparing apple to orange, right? So it's
Hmm.
it's unfair. First thing, and second, talk about you might not know what the other person that you're comparing with that is putting how much they are putting in, right? What are the resources, what are the network they have, which you may not have, right? So I think the I think you touched on a very strong point, which is stop comparing, because everybody's journey is different, everybody's path is different, and only you yourself, you know your path. But definitely you talk about the self-doubt, whether am I the one, why should I be the one doing it. I think it comes along the way, as especially entrepreneurship is a lonely journey, right? It's a lonely journey, and you tend to self-doubt yourself, especially when things are not going your way. um, a lot of naysayers, a lot of people put you down, a lot of people say, why are you so crazy doing this and you're not making money? Why are you still continuing doing this? So I get it a lot of very often, like when I do this podcast, right? Like today is 104th episode. A lot of people
Hmm.
ask me, oh, Kenneth, are you monetizing? Are you making money from it? Like, duh. Does it matter to you? If you want to make money, there's a lot of other ways, a million ways to make money, right? Why make money from podcasts? So a lot of people will be asking me, oh, okay, I want to make podcasts because want to make money. But the key thing is, if you are thinking about making money, I would suggest you not to do any podcasts, right? For me, I gain like 100 over women entrepreneurs wisdom, right? Wisdom. So now I'm
Hmm.
100 times better. I can help people better. I can coach people better. I can even write a book about it, right?
Hmm.
Like 100 over episode. I can write another my second book on it. So it's always not what you anticipated, but all this, whatever you do, like whatever you have done, right? Like how we get connected, because I was curious about Game More. I was curious about what you guys are doing, and that's where we had this friendship that we
Hmm.
started on LinkedIn, and then you connected me with some really really awesome people, and I also shared my contacts, my network. I felt that, hey, this is something that you could. These are people that you can connect with, and I believe that synergy and all that. I think it comes naturally when you hit on with people who are like-minded, who are really
Hmm.
passionate as you, who really see what you're doing. I think it only take time, because even for my podcast, right, also take time when people start recognizing that, hey, Kenneth, you are really what you say you are. Because a lot of people, when I first initially started like 5 years ago, people don't see what I'm doing, and people are asking me, why is a man doing this, right? Why is a man so passionate about doing this? What's your agenda? What is your intention? So I think the same thing goes with Gail Murray. Why are you doing this? A lot of people will be asking you, like, why are you doing this? You can do other things to make money. You can stay in your engineering line. You can stay in your finance line. Why are you doing this, right? So maybe you can share with the women, right? Women entrepreneurs, or women aspiring women entrepreneurs who want to step into building a social enterprise. What would be your three tips for them?
Okay, one would be figure out what your purpose is. Why are you doing it?
Hmm.
Who are you doing it for? Why do you want to help them? How do you want to help them? And if you
Hmm.
have answers to all of those questions and you're 100% clear, then I think you're good to go. But those are very key, important questions to know, because people are always going to ask you as an entrepreneur, why are you doing this?
Hmm.
Right? And if you don't have an answer, then that's when they're going to look at you and say, why are you doing this? And so you really need to be very thorough and have thought it out. And I think that the world is really changing. I mean, the previous thought process was all about corporations and capitalism and making money, and now we're starting to think more openly. We're starting to think more about people more conscientiously. So it's more about the people and less about the businesses. So that's not to say we're doing like a socialist type of model, but it's capitalism with consciousness or compassion. And that's really the key, because when you keep that in mind always, then when you're better off, it's going to take time to succeed, because it always takes time to grow something big. It's never a short-term race. It's always a long-term race. So you have to be willing to dedicate that time and understand that it's going to have a lot of ups and downs. And the graph, right? It's between here and here, but it looks like this.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of ups and downs along the way. And you have to just remind yourself that you're doing this. And that's why it's key to have a purpose. Because when you remind yourself that I'm doing this for this reason, I know that this is the reason why this is going to work, because of this reason, because I believe in it, and I believe it in 110%, then you can make someone else believe in it as well. And that's how you get people to actually follow you. But you have to really have a solid foundation in yourself and your belief system.
Wow. Thanks a lot, Catherine. So for the 3 tips, are you saying that you have to find out your purpose, why you're doing what you're doing, and who are you doing it for, and how are you gonna do it, right? That's that 3 tips. Basically break it down into.
Yeah, I think those are good. And actually, one more thing, I would also say definitely work on your network. Someone gave me a test recently, and it was who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
That you are the estimated average of the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Right.
So if you're not surrounding yourself with people that support you, that love you, that are willing to guide you, that help you, that are positive in your life, it's really hard to succeed. So, as much as we might love people, if they aren't adding value into our lives, when you're setting out to be an entrepreneur, you kind of have to just shed those people, because it's going to be a really tough and lonely journey, like you said. And you really need a lot of positive people who are going to help you and push you, because you can't push that boulder up the mountain by yourself. So understanding that your network is really key to driving your success. So build that network, invest in people who are going to invest in you. Invest in the long-term building of relationships, because those are the ones that come back time after time. But it takes, sometimes it's going to take 5, 15, 20, 25, 100 people that you talk to, and maybe 1 or 2 end up actually sticking around. And that's okay. Everyone's so busy working on their own things that you just have to, you have to find ones that really align with you. And it takes time to find those people, but when you do, it's worth it.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about the network, because there's also a saying, your network is your net worth. So if you want to build a business, definitely your network, and look into the 5% that you hang out with the most in your business, especially in businesses, because like my mentor always say, right, this 5% should not be your family members, should not be your friends, because they love you, but they won't be walking down the path with you. And then like what Jack Ma used to say, right? He said that the people that contribute to your business are your customers, but at the end, who's enjoying all the fruits are not your customers. They are the people around you. So do be careful of who you mix around with, especially running your business, because they could be the one that is pulling you down. Yeah. So thanks a lot for sharing these 3 tips, and also talk about the network. Absolutely right about that. So what would be your last advice, right, for audiences who want to start their business, especially for those who want to create a social impact?
I don't know if I can say any much more than what I've already advised, to be honest. But think about the needs of the people around you. And if you want to start something, you want to start a social enterprise, it's a good way to go. It's the best way and the way forward. A social enterprise, it just means a business that is socially inclined. That's all it means. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of even if you want to start a fashion brand, or you want to start a cooking channel, or you want to, I don't know, anything that you want to do, you can make a social cause out of it, or make a social cause a part of your CSR, your corporate social responsibility, and just make sure that you dedicate time and effort into maintaining that, because that'll really help authenticate you as a brand, and you as a person, when you're willing to dedicate your time and work towards other people. And people are willing to support you when you do that too, because they see that you're an authentic person, and you're not just trying to consume for yourself and make yourself rich, but you're also building up people along the way. And that's,
Yep.
When you're able to build something that supports people underneath you, your weight and your caliber just grows that much more, because you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about others as well.
Yep, yeah, you are absolutely right. Because whether you're running a social enterprise or not, you still need to make profit so that you are able to sustain the business. A lot of social enterprise went bust because they are not able to sustain. They are not able to even feed the people that is supporting the social enterprise. So thanks a lot for sharing. And maybe for the audience who want to get connected with you, how can they get connected with you?
My email, I'm always on LinkedIn. I knew you're going to show my email isn't there, but my email is ceo@gaia-amore.com if you want to email me directly. But LinkedIn is definitely a great way to go.
Once again, thanks, Catherine, for sharing so much about, especially in this episode, empowering women in developing countries. You also shared about what are the challenges and struggles that you have faced as an entrepreneur, especially building a social enterprise, and what are the difficulties in building this. So once again, thanks for making time. And for those who are watching or hearing this episode, do let us know what are your thoughts and what are your comments. So once again, Catherine, thank you for making time. I hope you have a great day, a great stay over at your beautiful hometown, Sweden, and hope to connect with you again. And once again, thanks everybody for watching and listening to Mompreneur Space Live Show podcast, where we bring to you every week amazing story, amazing women change makers that will share their entrepreneurial journey with us. So once again, thanks everyone, and I'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye,
Thank you, Kenya.
Catherine.
Bye.